What a great way to start a series called Soul Keeping. Thank you, band. As we enter into this series, you'll know that there's sort of a wash of soul music around the place before and after the service. And in the series, we'll be enjoying soul music from week to week. Anatomy of the Soul. As we begin this series, I have a question for you. What is your soul? Is it someplace, something that's hidden deep inside of you? Or is your soul this thing that when you die is sort of like a carbon copy that floats away in a kind of transparent pattern into the atmosphere? Is your soul a unique pie chart that sort of combines all of the elements of your opinions, your character, your Netflix watch list, and your Spotify favorites? What is your soul? And where is it? Is it in your rib cage, sort of in your heart, or is it in your gut, like right in your kidneys, or maybe it's in your foot? Where is your soul? Dallas Willard, a great Christian thinker and philosopher, says, your soul is not just something that lives inside of you. It's not something that just lives on after your body dies. It is the most important thing about you. It is your life. So, how is your soul? Perhaps you have no clue. Perhaps the pace of life is just so fast and furious that you really don't even have an awareness of how your soul is. The demands of work and the challenges of parenting, the need to get supper on or clean out the inbox in your email is just too much for you to even think, let alone ponder how it is with your soul. The soul is not some deeply secret and mysterious interior part of you. Your soul is a combination of everything, body and spirit, mind and feelings, your inner life and your social life. So how is it with your soul? This week we're going to talk about the anatomy, the structure, the nature of our souls. And we're going to take a look at different parts of us and how they fit together. And then in the next 3 weeks, we are going to talk about the needs and longings of our souls and how we satisfy those needs and longings in ways that are frankly inappropriate and destructive and other ways that are life-giving and nourishing. And then we'll end our series by asking the question, what happens to our souls when we die? My name is John, and I am part of the pastoral team here. And those of you who have been around here for a while will know that this last fall was a little bit difficult for me. There was a moment when all of a sudden I came face to face with some things in my life that were not pretty. And I disappeared for a few weeks. Didn't take vacation, didn't announce anything to anybody else, just disappeared. And when I returned to work, it was sort of limited duties and only part-time until the beginning of January. And I thought maybe I should tell you the story because it has everything to do with how my soul was and how my soul is. And maybe in telling this story, it'll help you think about how your soul is. I was in the airport, Winnipeg Airport, sort of the second week of November. And I got a text, I got a phone call, and I got an email all within the same minute. And all of a sudden, it felt like my life had this nuclear meltdown where I didn't know that I had control of my circumstances and my world anymore. I maybe should have stayed home, but I got on the plane anyways. Funny thing happened. I was so distraught and distracted that when I got off the plane, I took the wrong carry-on bag out of the overhead compartment and went off to my hotel. Meanwhile, my bag went on its way to Japan. I offered to go get it, but they wouldn't give me the free ticket. So my bag has been around the world in ways that I haven't. But that day I started seeing bright spots in front of my eyes for no apparent reason. I don't know if this has ever happened to you. You know, like a flash bulb goes off in front of your eyes? It was like that kind of effect. I was in meetings for the next couple of days, and I'm the secretary of this board that I'm part of, and I don't think I took very good notes, and I certainly didn't make any productive contributions. I was completely disoriented, distracted, disengaged. Like you put dis in front of a word, and that was me. I got home on Saturday, and And all of a sudden, the pieces started to come together. Our foster son had been in jail since September, where he still is. And we had 3 people very close to us die in the space of just a few days. And since then, another 4 people close to us have passed away. And in this season of turmoil, I realized that I wasn't taking very good care of my soul. And it just took one phone call, one text, one email for it to all come apart. Sunday morning, I stood right over here and I said to a trusted friend, I says, I think I might have what they call secondary PTSD or caregiver's PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. You see, as a pastor, I have the joy and privilege of walking with many of you as you go through seasons of distress, as relationships melt down, as mental health challenges surface, as a financial crisis arises. And in your seasons of distress, I am privileged to walk with you. And so the result is my life is a lot like a bank vault. I have a lot of other people's safety deposit boxes in my heart. And their stuff is their stuff, but it's somehow stored, secrets and stories in my life. And in this moment, it was like all of this earthquake in my life had caused all of these safety deposit boxes to rattle open, and the contents were strewn across the floor. And I had to pick up a piece and say, is this mine or somebody else's? Not mine. These feelings don't connect to me. These thoughts, they're not part of my story, and they need to go back into somebody else's box. And in this time, I realized I started to react. Like my phone would ring and I'd flinch. Have you ever had that moment? You're expecting bad news and then the phone rings and you flinch because you're waiting for it? Or my cell phone would vibrate telling me there's a text that came in, and my heart would race and I would break into a cold sweat for a text. And I didn't check email at all for a couple of days for sure. And Tuesday of that week, I was leading a variety of meetings. I don't think I was any good as a leader. I didn't serve the teams well that I'm part of. By the end of that day, I started to put a plan together. I needed to talk to my doctor. This heart racing, sweating, spots in front of my eyes thing, we got to deal with that. Call my counselor because there's stuff going on that I can't make sense out of. And I'm going to call a spiritual director because I clearly cannot pastor myself. I cannot take care of my soul in some ways. I need somebody to guide me. Wednesday morning, we have a great set of elders here at the meeting place, just a remarkable set of people. And I had a meeting with Dan, who leads our elder team, 7 a.m., and we talked for about half an hour. And at the end of that half hour, the story would be this: John, you are done in the office today. Delegate whatever you can, hand it off. Whatever can't be delegated simply just won't get taken care of, and that's okay. Don't check your email. Leave. Do what you need to do to take care of your soul. And he prayed with me. Gave me freedom and space needed for some soul work. By the end of the day, I delegated a whole bunch of things, and as I walked out of the office, I grabbed a book I had been meaning to reread for a while. I read it about a dozen years ago, one of those collecting information books, right? You're just sort of getting more ideas, and I grabbed this book because I wanted to give it a good read, and I thought if I'm taking a couple of weeks off, I can just enjoy reading. And so I read chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 2, chapter 2, chapter 2. 5 times I read chapter 2 before I could get to chapter 3. And I realized I didn't have anything like PTSD, secondary caregiving trauma at all. I had a disordered soul. The gears weren't working together properly. It was not functioning the way the designer had made or intended. How is your soul? How is your soul? And how would you know how your soul is? What are the signs and clues that would tell you your soul is well? We just sang, "It is well with my soul." What are the signs and clues that tell you that your soul is well or tell you that it's not? I probably should have paid attention to some of these things much earlier. But I am so glad that I came to an awareness and others gave me the permission to tend to my soul. And in this series, we want to ask you to pay attention and to tend to your soul also. So I thought maybe it would be very good if we took a look at the anatomy of the soul. When I was in the middle of this distress, a scripture came to me, words of Jesus that are found in Matthew, Mark, and Luke. And we'll read the version that we see here in Matthew, where Jesus says, "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened." Oh yeah, that was me. "And I will give you rest. Take my yoke, take my teachings upon you, and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart. And you will find rest for your souls, for my yoke is easy and my burden is light." So, do you know where your soul is? Can you feel that place in your body that is right now responding to the very words that I am saying? Is there a response in your mind that's going, "That's it, and I know"? How is it with your soul? Jesus, in a conversation with one of the spiritual leaders, the spiritual leader asked him the question of the commandments, which is the most important? And Jesus says, the most important one is this: "Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, and with all your strength." And here we have the description of the parts of our being that we need to pay attention to. And so let's first talk about this innermost part, the heart, or the spirit, or the will. This innermost circle of our lives. This is the place where we make powerful decisions. This is the place where choice is. This is where we give and create ideas. And then there's around this innermost part of our lives something which we call the mind. And in Hebrew thinking, the mind is a place of all thoughts and all feelings. Every thought has a feeling, and every feeling has a thought. And that is in the mind. And we're going to talk about that as we look at Romans chapter 12, about the renewal of our minds. And what does it mean to have our minds renewed? And then the next circle in the life in your life and mine is the body. The body is that source of energy, that place where all of our decisions are acted out. The body is the place where we've embedded all of our habits and all of our rhythms and routines, all of our addictions. All of these things are embedded in our bodies. And then around that is the relationship part of us. Because you and I are created to be relational beings, it means that when I connect with you, part of you finds itself here. I take you into my heart. And when you connect with me, you take part of me into your heart. And we are deeply connected because we are designed and wired to be relational beings. And around our relationships is our soul. And our soul is in some ways like our skin. Just hold your hand out and gently touch your hand, and you will feel sensation. Our soul holds all of these things together. Our spirit, our mind, our bodies, our relationships, our soul holds all of this together. And while it is at the surface of us, it is also the deepest part of us. It is the part that keeps us all connected. And the challenge in my life, and maybe the challenge in your life, is that parts of this anatomy of the soul had become disconnected from each other. So I want us to spend a few minutes and just take a good look at the anatomy of the soul so that you would have, from today forward as we move through this teaching series, a better idea of how you might look at and reflect on what's going on in your life. One of the scriptures that we are using to integrate all of this is Romans chapter 12. And Romans chapter 12 begins with these very powerful words. Therefore, I urge you, brothers and sisters, in view of God's mercy, to offer your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing to God. This is your true and proper worship. As much as we might like coming here and singing together and saying, I'm enjoying worshiping with others, it says that the offering of our bodies in a way that is pure and holy is in fact the most significant and powerful form of worship available to us. And then it says, do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. The world is trying to conform us to its image. Every advertiser has an agenda for us. Every political party has an ideology that they are shaping that they want us to participate in and support them in. We are constantly engaged with thought shapers and world shapers who want us to conform to their images. And it says, do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you'll be able to attest and approve what God's will is, his good, pleasing, and perfect will. In other words, God's heart, God's spirit, God's will, the very center of God himself, wants to mirror itself into your life. You will be able to test and approve. You'll be able to find it. You'll be able to evaluate what it is that's coming at you, and you will be able to integrate it into your life. These are important elements of what it means to be a soulful person. So let me ask, are you a soulful person or are you a selfish person? But we have come to live in an age of sort of like the selfie, where we're all trying to sort of create and cultivate and curate an image of ourselves. Very often, our outer selves, what people see and perceive from a distance. But there's inner parts of us that just don't line up with the images that we create and the images that we see others have created. So let's take a really close look first at that most inner circle, the spirit. Often as you're reading the Psalms, for example, when Solomon and Savasha spoke Psalm 23, scriptures that they have spoken every night before they go to bed. They're integrating words about the soul, about the heart, about the spirit. You will see those words used interchangeably throughout the Bible. And this is the very center of your freedom and your creativity. And this is in some ways what is like God's signature on our lives. Your capacity to originate something comes from your spirit. And so you can originate good or evil because your spirit has the power to create. And every choice and decision that you have is an act of the will. It's an expression of your heart. And the life is organized by the will. You get to make powerful decisions and choices about the mundane things and about dramatic, life-altering things. And the Spirit governs what we think and feel. I'm going to say that again because we're going to move in a moment to the mind. The Spirit governs what we think and feel. In other words, you have the power to choose a whole bunch of your thought narratives. You have the power to choose how you will respond in certain circumstances. And through training, you can program your mind to be a mind that responds to our world and our circumstances and relationships in a way that is consistent with your Creator's intent. And so with every choice is connected to a feeling. Every thought is connected to a feeling, and every feeling is connected to a thought. And so what you allow into your mind powerfully informs how you will then begin to respond. Because as your mind takes in new ideas, it connects them to feelings. And sometimes those are healthy connections, vibrant connections, life-giving connections. And other times, they're soul-destroying connections. Because we've allowed things into our mind that are generating responses and feelings in our bodies that just shouldn't be. And you see, the spirit, the heart, is constantly searching for input. It's constantly searching for input. Because we are created for relationship, we are created to search for connection with God. The thing is, between us and God, others are trying to get in between and trying to offer us alternative inputs. And so the spirit, the heart, has to discern, is this input of God or is it from some other source? Does it have some other nature? Around the spirit is the mind. Have you ever opened up your computer and you get a notice that says your operating system needs to be updated? And when you get that notice, it says, do you want to do that right now or do you want to schedule it for when you go to sleep? Because it's going to shut your system down for about 45 minutes as it downloads software, as it loads in new software, and you won't be able to do anything as we're updating the system. Your mind is very much like the operating system of your body. And in your mind, you have the ability to make very powerful programming decisions for your body. And some of these programming decisions are really, really important. You see, in the mind is where we have perception and imagination. You can cultivate and create something from nothing. When you think about that, that's a remarkable thing. When we were in our last series watching the painters, they were creating something from nothing on stage in front of us. And I'm going, I wish I had those talents. I've been given different talents. You've been given different talents. But here were artists who could create something from nothing. We all have the ability to create something from nothing because God has given us rich and fertile minds. We can imagine, but we can also assess. We can look at history. We can understand time then, time as it is now, and we can imagine into the future what time will be and what options are available to us. And the mind is constantly seeking input because it's connected to our spirits. And our feelings incline us towards things or they incline us away from things. Our feelings involve a tone of what's pleasant and what's unpleasant. Our feelings provide attraction towards something or repulsion away from it. Our feelings are constantly offering an emotive response to input that's coming. When I bend in for a kiss and Rose responds, my feelings all of a sudden connect to my body. And I all of a sudden make massively different decisions because she kissed me. And because I have feelings, I think about a whole variety of things. The same is true when I stub my toe. My body has a pain which tells me withdraw, and I have physical feelings, but I also have emotional feelings which rush through my mind, and then I say words with my mouth that I probably ought not to. But I've programmed my mouth to do certain things, and some of that programming has not been corrected, and so my mouth says things that old programming says that's a legitimate way of responding to your feelings. And your mind is going, there's a problem here because you shouldn't be using that vocabulary anymore. We've been working on updating the system. And I said, yeah, but that part of the system I hit tonight. We're not updating it now. See, our feelings and our thoughts work together, and as we've made choices in our wills or our spirits or our hearts, and we've worked at the programming in our spirits, we come to the body, and in the body we have reflexive responses. Anybody watch the hockey game last night? Yeah, what a game. 9-3. So you ever see what happens on the ice? There's an empty spot on the ice, there's a player moving towards it, and there's a puck coming across, and they meet at exactly the right time at an empty spot on the ice. That player, for just the briefest of seconds, touches the puck, and it moves to another empty spot on the ice. And a player is moving towards that empty spot. And at that very moment, with a flick of a wrist, the puck goes in the net. And we have a hat trick. And hats are thrown on the ice, and there's this emotional response to the moment. And Roslovic is about as chill a hat trick getter as I've ever seen. And why? Because the body was programmed. full of muscle memory responses, where peripheral vision at best is what is guiding the touch of a puck to a stick and directing that puck to its next location. You see, we program our bodies so that we don't have to make exhausting decisions about every little detail of our lives. And so we program our fingers, keystrokes on a keyboard. Our fingers go exactly to where that key is without us thinking about it because we programmed our bodies. Our bodies respond exactly as directed. Exactly as directed. I'm going to say that one more time. Our bodies respond exactly as directed. And so what happened when my heart starts racing and I'm seeing bright spots in front of my eyes as I break into a cold sweat, as I flinch when the phone rings, it means that somewhere there's a problem because this has never happened to me before. My body was not programmed to do these things. It was a signal, a sign, a symptom that there was a deep, deep problem. And then my body's responding to others. And so if I didn't return your calls in the middle of November, I am so sorry. But I just didn't have it in me. And if you find that you are reacting negatively or you are responding positively to someone else, it's because your body has been shaped by your mind and the decisions of your spirit. You see, your will has very little energy of its own. The energy of your will is all expressed in your body. So when you say, it doesn't matter what I do with my body, I says, actually it matters entirely what you do with your body. Because your body is an expression of the deepest part of you. In Greek thinking, the body and spirit were separate beings that were sort of combined together for a while. And the body was mostly base or bad or evil. It was corruptible. And the spirit was this noble thing. And the end of life meant that your spirit was free of this corruptible body. But that is not true in Hebrew thinking at all. In Hebrew thinking, the spirit and the body are all combined together. From spirit and mind and body and your relational self all makes your soul. And so how we are in our bodies are deeply connected to how we are in the decisions of our spirit and the programming that we have. So how is it with your soul? You see, the soul is that thing that holds us all together and makes us who we truly are. The funny thing is, whether it's in reading the Bible or listening to music or watching drama, whether it's TV, movies, or theater, is we often refer to our souls in the third person. How is it with your soul? It's a really funny thing how we speak of the soul as an entity. A soul is not some secret little part of us. A soul is the sum of us. And I discovered that my soul was a mess because I had not tended to my soul. You see, the thing about you and I is that God has designed us to work a certain way. But we have decided to allow others to program our bodies, to shape and reshape our thinking and conform us and our decisions to the patterns of this world. And we've started as a result to live a selfish life instead of a soulful life. And a selfish life gets the order of things wrong all the time. A selfish life confuses the location of decision. I am feeling something. That's my decision. Actually, you have a power called your spirit that makes decisions. You don't have to make a decision based on your feeling. I saw something, I imagined something, I created something in my mind, therefore I will do that. And I'm going, you have the ability to program your viewing choices, your mental choices, and that will reshape your life. You see, the soulful life takes the disordered body, mind, and spirit, and it reorders it according to God's plan. A disordered soul is the one that Jesus says, "Come to me, all you who are weary and heavy burdened, and I will give you rest." Rest for your souls. So join us next week as we take a look at how we satisfy the longings and needs of our souls.
Time to ask you some pointed questions. First of all, thank you for sharing. I feel like I need to give you a hug.
I'm okay with that. Thank you.
The first question, let me get the right phone here. The first question is basically this. Pastor John, thanks for sharing some of your story. It's good to know that soul struggle is part of everyone's life, including yours. It's the beginning of February, though, not that long since it happened. Some people struggle for a lot longer. How did you get through it so fast?
Well, I don't want to pretend that I'm through it. I think that's the first thing. And so fast. I think one of the other pieces with struggle is when you identify the problem. And I think I had the gift of an early identification, truly, where some people will struggle for a long time before they come to a place of recognition. This is what's happening, which means they've accumulated a lot. If you use the analogy of a heart, if you've got a whole bunch of little heart attacks all the way along, as it's happened for someone that I know, you accumulate irreversible heart damage, which means that the recovery process after heart surgery is a lot longer. If you catch it early, you have less opportunity to accumulate the damage. And I think in some ways I had the gift given to me of an early identification. I think many of us have responses, much like I had, and we ignore them. I certainly was tempted to ignore it. I don't think that I could ignore it because it was severe enough immediately. The other part of it, though, is it lingers, and restoring your soul, the recovery process, takes time and intention, which means it's taking time away from something else. So going to see a therapist takes time. The assignments from the therapist also take time. Seeing a spiritual director takes time, and the assignments that the spiritual director has given me also take time. So the work is continuing, which means there are some things that I am no longer doing because I am now doing these things that have been prescribed to be my soul keepers. I am my soul keeper, but others are helping me in that process. And so it's not done yet by any means.
I just want to affirm a few things. First, that you're able to speak of noticing this and noticing the early evidence of this, and that you're encouraging us to be attentive to ourselves. And the other thing is that you're modeling the way, that you're turning to people that will actually speak truth and hope and encouragement into your life. So thank you very much for not only sharing a story, but also illustrating to us how it is that we would navigate through this. So there are some very specific questions that have come your way. There's a whole bunch. I can't ask them all, so I'll pick a few. Here's one. My mind has been renewed. I've offered up my body to God, but how do I test what God's will is? I've been trying to figure it out for years and cannot find His will for my life. What would you respond?
Very often we think of will as God's pinpoint plan for me. If you say, I take a map and I'm going to place a spot on that map with a pin, that is God's will. God's will is revealed to you and I in Scripture in a whole bunch of different ways. Most of those ways have with them an action to take. And we only discover God's will as we take the actions that are described for us or prescribed for us in Scripture. Just reading without acting doesn't reveal too much to us because we have a thought and a feeling that is not yet connected to a response. And so responsiveness in Scripture is in fact one of the most powerful ways of discovering God's will. Have you ever had a very heavy object, I'll say a piano, and you've tried to push it across the room to a new location? The first push is really hard. Once it has some movement, it doesn't take that much effort to push it as long as it's on wheels. Discovering God's will is a lot like that. The first moves are the hardest, and I think it's God has a hard time moving us because we've got no momentum. So you get momentum by responding to the specific things that God says that we should do. So if He says, do this, do it. You will get some momentum towards God's will. Don't do this, because it's going to be a problem, don't do it. You will have momentum towards God's will. And God's will is a direction more than it is a location. And I usually think of will, God's plan for my life, as a location, not a direction.
Oh, that's very helpful. We're out of time, but thank you for those insightful comments. So again, thank you for blessing us this morning with your story.
Thank you.
There are a lot of things that have been sent our way today, but here is a note that I think I'd like to start with. Pastor John, thanks for sharing some of your story. It's good to know that soul struggle is part of everyone's life, including yours. It's the beginning of February, though, not that long since it happened. Some people struggle for a lot longer. How'd you get through it so fast?
Yeah, ask Rose. I'm not through it. No, I took an immediate break. I think one of the things that I was given a gift in was recognizing it early. Sometimes we ignore symptoms for a long time. I think I was given the gift of recognizing these early, mostly because they caught me so off guard. I was given the gift of support, where people around me supported me. But the other thing is, hard work continues even though back to work happens. And I think that's true for all of us. Hard work continues even when back to work happens. And so continue to see a therapist and continue to see a spiritual director and do the hard work in life. And it takes time and money, and it means that you're not going to do something else so that you can do it. If you're going to go see a counselor and you're going to go see a spiritual director and they both give you assignments, that's going to take time that you're not doing other stuff with. And it's good to do that, actually. It's not how I'm wired. I'd rather hang out with people and enjoy a coffee, but it's good to do the soul work, and it just takes some time.
Well, we appreciate you sharing your story with us this morning, and I bless you that as you're on this road, as we're all on this road, that it would be a very, very good experience for you, and that you make some good discoveries. Okay, there's a bunch of texts that have come in, and so there's no way I can capture all of them, so I will try a few. When the Bible says to take every thought captive, is this what it means to renew our minds?
Yes.
Okay,
Next question. No. Taking thoughts captive means that our minds have a way of running away with us. And because we have been blessed with the incredible capacity for creativity, not all creativity leads us to good places. So we literally have to discipline. We need to focus our minds. We have to make viewing choices. We have to make input decisions. And I joked earlier at the very beginning about, is our soul simply the collection of our opinions, convictions, and Netflix viewing? Yes, it is, in some ways. It is a collection of those things. And so when you make certain choices, there will be certain inevitable outcomes based on the programming that you've just put into your life. And so taking your thoughts captive means I am going to discipline, I will conform, I will shape those thoughts, my thought life, in a way that is God-honoring. This is not particularly culturally this isn't particularly what our culture tells us to do. Our culture says, let your thoughts go. It doesn't actually affect your bodies, and it certainly doesn't affect your spirits. It's just a movie. It's not just a movie. It's not just a movie. I can't watch chick flicks for this reason, principally. Because chick flicks, sorry if you happen to like the genre, chick flicks are based on somebody who's often in a committed relationship, falling in love with somebody who's not in that committed relationship. Often adultery is involved. Hard to cheer for that one. And then I wind up cheering for the ending of a committed marriage and celebrating an adulterous relationship. It's the narrative of chick flicks. Conforming my mind means I just can't go there. I love Rose too much to have that reshape my imagination. You could say that for every kind of movie genre except submarine movies. So.
Thanks for that very practical help there. That's good. Okay, here's another one. So as someone who often is involved in the hard parts of others' lives, how would you suggest going about the process of sorting others' emotions from your own to avoid taking on unnecessary stress?
I think you need to read the question again for all of us, not just for me.
So, as someone who often is involved in the hard parts of others' lives, how would you suggest going about the process of sorting others' emotions from your own to avoid taking on unnecessary stress?
I'm going to give you a little object lesson. You're free to do exactly as I'm doing right now. It goes like this. You pray. It's actually a thing. It is. You should try it sometime. Where you take somebody else's concerns and you lift them up to God and say, this is them. I'm worried about them. You love them. Do something about them. And they're yours now, God. It's what it's called intercession in the Bible, where we plead somebody else's case. But let's be sure that the lawyer is never the one standing in dock. The therapist is not the client. And because your friend is in trouble or your family member is deeply burdened doesn't mean that your life is a mess. You are your own person. And I think the only way we really have clarity on that is to give it away. Just so you know, therapists, they go see counselors too. They give it away. I'm dealing with this. People do this. Why would you carry a burden yourself that you were never intended to carry? And so there has to be a process. Each of us will have our own process. Some people do this at the bar. They go, they talk to somebody who listens, they have a couple of drinks, and they're done. Maybe not the best way of doing it, but it's a way of doing it. As followers of Jesus, we do it by getting on our knees and pray. So,
Prayer, the single most important response to the life circumstances we face. Thank you, John.
Thank you, Bob. I want to invite you to stand. And I want you to know, if you have had anything this morning that touched your soul in story and song and word, and you want to pray about it, then come and join somebody up here and pour your heart out. If you want to know the Jesus who actually touches us at the very center and renews us, then we'd love to introduce you. And may you go with the knowledge that God has created you to be a fully whole and complete person. And he wants beauty to come out of your lives that will change this world. As you see this image, know that you are not just skin and bones, but you are the breath of God given to others in Jesus' name. Go in that joy and that peace and live that kind of life. And come back next week and let's do this all over again. Have a great week.